Hey all, Frank Mano here. Today I want to share with you how to basically set up your electric guitar. This is something that every guitarist ought to know how to do, and it's not that difficult at all. So I wanted to give you a quick run through of how I do it. I'll tell you right up front that the techniques, measurements, tips, tricks I share with you, 90% of it is from a book by Dan Erlewine called Complete Guitar Repair. I highly recommend you get it. It comes with a CD and it'll really get you on your way. But for now, let's just take a quick and basic look on how to set up your electric guitar. Also, I ask you bear with me. The only camera I have is the camera in my computer, so if some of the shots seem awkward or not as close up as you like, please forgive me. But I hope you get something out of this. Grab your notebook and let's go. Okay, first let's talk about some of the very basic tools you'll need. I want to stress to you that every tool I'm about to show you is extremely inexpensive. I don't know if you have a store called Harbor Freight by you, but these are readily available. You could also check your Home Depot or Lowe's or that kind of thing. First thing you'll need is a 6-inch steel ruler. Again, a very common item. I think this I bought at Lowe's for $2.99 or $3.99. Be sure to get one with the increments of 30 seconds and 60/4 because they also make them with 30 seconds and millimeters. I choose to use this one. So it's called a 6-inch steel ruler. About $3.99. These are two inexpensive Craftsman screwdrivers. I'm going to say they were probably about $1.99 each, a flathead and a Phillips head. They also come in a set. You'll need a hex key to do neck adjustments. That often comes with your guitar, but again, inexpensive item. Wire cutters. These were, I think, about $1.99. They don't last forever, but you'll get a few years out of them, or you could buy the better Craftsman ones. You'll need a string winder. These are pretty inexpensive. That's a little bit of a fancier one that I got. You could pick up a basic one at your local guitar store for a couple dollars, maybe even less. I like to use a power drill by Ernie Ball. You can see it just winds the string up. It just saves a lot of time, especially when I'm doing a lot at once. The one thing that may cost a few dollars is a tuner. I choose to use this Peterson Strobo tune. It's one of the most accurate tuners on the planet. It's excellent for doing intonation, but you could also achieve the same thing with your quartz tuner. I wouldn't suggest using something like a clip-on snark, although I like those. They're not going to really do it for intonation. And then lastly, you'll need a new set of strings. When you set up your guitar, you always want to put on new strings. Never, ever, ever use old strings to set up your guitar. It's just not going to come out right. I prefer Ernie Balls. I've been using them for, gee whiz, about 35, 40 years now. I like to put 10s on all of my guitars, but choose whichever brand you like. The only brand I would say you might want to stay away from are elixirs. Elixirs are wonderful because they last longer, but they tend to mute and muffle the tone of the string. And whether they're the nano webs or otherwise, I would highly recommend against those. So why don't we talk a little bit more about what the next step in our setup is. Okay, as we go to change our strings, a couple other things you'll want to have handy, basic stuff. First of all, a capo. I'll be explaining how and why we're going to use that in a second. The other thing to have ready is a clean guitar rag. I'm sure you've already got a bunch of these. They're very inexpensive. You could use microfiber, but I find the pure cotton to be more absorptive. And the other thing have ready is a guitar polish. The one I'd like to recommend to you is this Martin guitar polish, and here's why. The reason I like this Martin polish is because I would estimate it's probably 80% water, and it's great for cleaning when you don't want things to get gunked up. Too many times I've seen guitars that are greasy and oily and smudgy, and you know, unless you're sweating like a gorilla, you really don't need that. So I would highly recommend getting this Martin polish for general and basic cleaning, and also cleaning the fretboard. Now, one other thing to consider is that you may need to clean your fretboard, which we're not going to do at this time, but I would suggest using lemon oil. Getting a pure lemon oil, not just stuff you use to clean furniture, but you can get it from Stumac, and using a rag and taking the lemon oil and putting a little bit on the rag and then rubbing it in to the fretboard itself. You don't want to slather it on so it's dripping and that kind of thing. You just want to put enough on so the lemon oil is getting in. The lemon oil will let the dirt rise to the surface. Now this you don't have to do every time unless you notice that your fretboard is dirty. So that's important to do. Now when you take your strings off, I've seen people go clip, 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 clip. You don't want to do that. It's a shock to the neck. It's a shock to the truss rod. I would just try taking one string off at a time. Again, I'm going to use this little gadget here. And just go like this. You could loosen them up, take them off one at a time. And it's just a lot safer. Be careful about when you clip these off. You don't want to have loose ends around for your wife or your dog to step on or that kind of thing. And then you just simply snip these off one at a time. And I would suggest just throwing them away as soon as you go ahead and cut them off. Okay, now anchoring our strings at the tuner is very important. I'm going to show you a way that I was taught many, many years ago. And I think this is the best way because it really preserves your tuning. I've never had tuning issues. I've never had string slippages or breakage or anything like that using this way. The one caveat is when you remove your strings, it takes a second for you to get them off. So this would work on a Gibson or a Fender, of course, or anything like that. Obviously, if you're using a Tele, you're going to go straight down into it, so that wouldn't matter. But here's all you do. You pull your string all the way through, and we're just going to do this on the E. I would go up about 2 inches, regardless on, again, if it's a Fender or Gibson. 2 inches is right about here. And then what I would do is bend the string inward to the headstock. If it's a Gibson, you're going to bend it in this way toward the headstock if you're doing the last 3. So bend it in, okay? Pull the string down. You're going to take the open end and go under, and you're going to lock this string in place, okay? So you're going to go up, over, down and under, and lock the string in place. Then what happens, I don't know if you could see it on my poor video here, but as you are wrapping the string, it actually locks the string in place as you go around and you just multiply the winds. So the string has really nowhere to go, and again, I've never had a problem with breakage or anything like that. As you wrap the string, you want to make sure the string is wrapping from top to bottom, not otherwise. So this is one way to do it, and then you could do it for the rest of your 6 or 3 and 3, however you decide. Okay, so let's just pretend you've replaced all your strings and you've cut the top. This is a little known secret when you're cutting your strings off the top. It's not cool to leave them all dangling and wiry. I don't know where that came from, but that's Frank's pet peeve number 132. Cut your strings on top. Then what you want to do also is gently stretch your strings out. So I just usually grab them and I'll go like this at various points every few frets. And you just keep doing this till they feel like they've stopped stretching. If you don't do this, they're just going to keep, as you're playing or you got a new set of strings, they're going to keep going out of tune on you. So don't forget to stretch your strings out when you're done replacing them. Okay, the next thing we want to be concerned about, and I want to be careful, this is an advanced step, so it's maybe not something you can do, but I want you to be aware of it. One of the most important things, and don't ask me why, but so many manufacturers mess up here, is the height of each individual nut slot. Okay, now the Erlewine specs on most guitars, primarily Fenders, is 0.0 020. And what you would use for that is a feeler gauge set. And mine is got a little .020 in there. These are also inexpensive. These are probably about $6 at some of the stores that we mentioned. And what you're going to do is very gently, be careful not to hurt the guitar at all. You're going to want to slide the feeler gauge on top of the first fret, and you want to make sure you've got that 020 between the bottom of the string and the top of the fret. And if it's more than that, chances are it needs to come down a little bit. And again, this is what I wouldn't suggest unless you've had some experiences. You get a file gauge. This is a large one. They come a lot thinner than this, of course. And you would gently just hollow out that seat a little bit. It should be a little rounded on one end. And again, this is something that you do want to leave for a luthier if you're not familiar. Now, a quick way that I check, like if I'm in a store looking to purchase a guitar or something, I will hold down the strings at the 3rd fret and just with my eyeball, make sure I not only have just a little teeny bit of space between the 1st fret and the bottom of the string, but also that it's consecutive, where the low E ought to have a touch more space than the high E. So again, the .020 is our beginning measurement, and then the rest goes by taste, the action you use, the feel you want, and that kind of thing. Not to be redundant, but nut height is one area that few people pay attention to, and it'll make a huge difference on how your guitar feels and how you're able to set it up action-wise. I've had $5,000 guitars come in with some of the worst cut nuts in the world. Cutting nuts is a whole other art in itself, and it also is covered in the Erlewine book. Okay, now let's talk about relief. Relief is just a fancy way of saying the amount of bow in your neck. Every guitar bows forward a little bit, or at least it should, and the ideal is to have just a little bit of forward bow in your neck. If your guitar has too much back bow, it could be over humidified and it needs a truss rod adjustment. For the sake of this little quick video, we're going to leave the guitar in this laying down position, but when you do relief, it should be as if you're holding it, just as the weight and the geometry of the guitar sets in. So here comes our capo trick. What we want to do is put a capo on the 1st fret of the guitar. And the reason we do that is because we want all the strings held down there. Now, you could technically use a straight edge, but what we're going to do is use our strings as the straight edge. So let's just say, for example, we'll use our low E string with the capo holding it at the 1st. We're going to hold it at the very last fret, and then what we're going to do is take our feeler gauge set, and the specs called for on this type of guitar, and whether it be Gibson or Fender now that I think about it, is .012 at the 7th fret. So at the 7th fret, 3, 5, 7, what we're going to do is keep our finger down there and see, do we have that kind of room in there? Now, I don't know if you could see that, but I have a little less than the .012. Remember, this is just a starting point. It's just a place to begin. Personally, I prefer my necks almost flat with the smallest amount of relief possible. It makes me play faster. It makes my action a lot better. It does get more buzzy the more straight you have the neck, but again, everybody's different. There are people who prefer a perfectly flat neck. Other people like playing with a lot of bow, forward bow. But again, a place to start, hold it at the 1st, hold it at the last, and just at the 7th fret between the top of the fret, the bottom of the string, again, be careful not to hurt the guitar, you're going to want to have approximately .012. You could also try this on the other side, and hopefully the measurements will be about the same. There will be a little more pull on the bass side than the treble. If it's significantly more different, that might mean you have a twist in your neck. So that's how we're going to check relief and make sure our neck is at the proper relief angle. Okay, let's talk about adjusting the truss rod. This is a procedure that has terrified people when there's no reason for it to be so, as long as you just use some common sense. Let's say, for example, my neck had too much forward bow. I would want to tighten my truss rod so it, of course, made the neck more straight. On a Fender-style guitar such as this, and Gibson's for that matter, will have the truss rod adjustment at the top. Vintage Fenders will have it at the bottom, which means you have to take the neck on and off every time you adjust it. But going under the premise we have too much forward bow, you would put the hex, or some would use a screwdriver or a nut driver. You would put the hex in there and turn. So if it's forward bow, we want to tighten the truss rod, so we would turn to the right. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey? We want to tighten the truss rod, go to the right as you're facing down this way, okay? And you're going to tighten your truss rod. Now here's the thing, just do a quarter turn at a time. Do a quarter turn, let it set, and then go back and recheck and say, okay, do I have my .012 in there? If not, do another quarter turn. If you have to do more than 3/4 of a turn, what I would recommend is doing the 3/4 and letting it sit till tomorrow. It could be a sign of something more significant going on in there, but guitars do need to settle. If the opposite is true, when your neck is back bowed, you're going to want to go to the left to loosen up the tension. So you loosen it up, and that'll cause the neck to come more flat. So you get the idea with that. Again, there's nothing to worry about. You can adjust your truss rod. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. Just do a little bit at a time. And if you notice you have to do a lot, let it sit. Let it wait till the next day. But if you have too much forward bow, the action's never going to feel right. If you have too much back bow, all you're going to get is a lot of buzzing. So let's get that neck right, and you'll be on the good road. Now, just a quick word for those specifically using a Strat. A Strat bridge could be a little bit of a challenge during a setup, but it doesn't have to be. What I would recommend, again, I'm speaking very generally right now, is the plane of the bridge plate I like to keep almost flat to the guitar if you've got an American standard bridge. I've seen too many people with the back of their guitar pulling up, and you rest your hand on it, it goes out of tune, it doesn't work well. Now, my personal preference would be to tighten the springs and put some springs in the back of the guitar through the plate here, so that the bridge, the back of the bridge is actually flush with the body. And that's going to do a couple things for you. It's going to improve tone, it's going to improve sustain. You'll still be able to whammy forward, so to speak, but try not to have your bridge sticking up. Keep it parallel to the body, and if anything, keep it flush by adding more springs or tightening more springs in the back. And again, this is something that basically only Strat owners have to deal with. If you have any questions, feel free to write me on that. Okay, let's talk about string height, or your action. You'll need your 6-inch steel ruler, and you'll also need whatever it takes to raise or lower your saddles. Again, some Fenders you can use a screwdriver. For other ones, you will need a hex. Now, here are specs, and they differ a little bit between Fender and Gibson, so listen up. If you've got a Fender-style guitar, we still have our capo up at the 1st fret, so leave your capo up there. And what you want to do at the 17th fret, and the reason we use the 17th fret for specifications, it's where the neck primarily meets the body. So what we're going to do is get our ruler, and between the top of the 17th fret and the bottom of that string, we're going to start with a measurement of 4/64. Okay, that's what's recommended by Fender. I have heard other people say start with 4/64 on the low E, and as you graduate to the high E, go down to 3/64, and that works pretty well. Personally, again, this is just me because I like low action, I will start at 3/64 all the way across the board. So you would measure the E string, you would take your adjustment tool and then adjust your saddle to be at that 3/64 or whatever you choose to use specification. Now that's on a Strat style guitar. On a Gibson style guitar, what's recommended, capo still at the 1st fret, holding the strings down. At the 12th fret, now Gibson recommends starting with 5/64 on the E. To me, that is way too high. Earlline suggests, which I prefer, 3/64 all the way across, and then adjust to taste. Again, my personal preference, I will start with 3/64 and graduate them down to probably just over 2/64. So again, the action's pretty low, but still playable. Now, the reason you do each string is because by measuring each string at the height you choose, let's say 3/64, what you end up with is the string radius matches the radius of the fretboard. Listen, I apologize for this camera work. I know it's real cheesy, but I'm hoping it's helping you. So again, we want to set up our string action that way, adjusting the saddles at the bottom. One thing to remember too, if you've got these Fender type saddles, and I guess it would go for Gibsons as well, is make sure the saddle is straight. You don't want the saddle to be crooked. So if I'm going to lower this high E string, I'm going to lower just a little bit on each side, so the saddle stays straight. You know, I know on a 3 saddle telly, they're supposed to be crooked as it accommodates for the string radius, or the neck radius rather. But make sure your saddle goes up and down evenly. You don't want it to go up and down on an angle. That's just going to help string spacing and help you stay in tune much better. So get that action set up with the capo on. Okay, we're going to talk about intonation now. The guitar is what's called an imperfect instrument. So our ultimate goal with intonation is to make the distance between the nut and the 12th fret the exact distance between the 12th fret and where it breaks on the saddle. Now, because of a number of factors, including your various string gauges, it's not going to be even all across. So we need to check how that works. If your guitar is not intonated, it won't tune well. So your chords will sound funky when you play them. It'll be hard to tune the guitar in general. So this is an important step. Now, I will say too that this step could drive you crazy because it takes some time. You sort of really have to be a little neurotic about it. So just be patient, especially at the beginning. The goal would be, now here's how we go. We're just going to use the B string as an example, and I hope you could see this, this tuner right here. This is a strobe tuner, so it's a little more difficult to use than your regular, but let's just take the B string. We want to first, so as you can see, and I'm seeing it backward, forgive me, it needs to be tuned just the string by itself. So we're just going to take the harmonic of the B till it stops moving. There we go. Now on your needle tuner, it's the same thing. You want to get the needle right in the middle. So just for the sake of time, let's just say, and this is what I meant about driving you crazy, especially on Strat style guitars, but let's just say this is perfect and the meter stopped moving. You do your harmonic, you get it exactly in the middle, and then you gently, don't press too hard, you gently fret at the 12th fret. Now you see these are close. Now one thing I should mention too, keep your volume and tone all the way open. And a lot of people say by using your neck pickup you get less stray harmonics. So that note, the harmonic on the 12th fret of the B string, ought to match the fretted note. Let's just try it on the E for the heck of it. Okay, now here's the thing to remember, and it isn't confusing, but just remember this. If the fretted note is lower than the harmonic note, you have to move the saddle forward. If the fretted note is lower than the harmonic note, move the saddle forward. If the fretted note is higher than the harmonic note, you pull the saddle backward in very small increments until they both match up as best as you can. Now, just to add to the confusion, I have heard luthiers say that certain guitars do better when the fretted B note is slightly flat, and I'm not telling you to do that, but just for your information, it's not a perfect system, but you want these harmonic notes to match the fretted notes, and that's your intonation, period. It's important to do, so spend some time with that, and don't forget, get a good tuner. One last thing, one thing I didn't mention in the last segment is to do the intonation, of course, we take the capo off. Now, in this segment, the last thing we're going to do is pickup height. Equally important to tone, because obviously the higher the pickup, the fuller the sound, the lower pickup, the thinner the sound. Also, if the pickup's too high, the magnetic field will interfere with the overall tuning and string vibration, and you'll get weird sounds and so on and so forth. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you some specifications, again, from the Erlewine book and from Fender. So let's say, for example, you've got just your general Strat or Telecaster or that sort of thing. What they're recommending in pickup height, and what you do is you press the string at the very last fret on either side, and then you measure between the top of the pickup and the bottom of the string, from the top of the pickup to the bottom of the string. And for that, we would use our 6-inch ruler, steel ruler, to see how we're doing there. But for your average Stratocaster, let's say, Fender is calling for 1/8 of an inch on the bass side. Again, we're pressing at the last fret from the top of the pickup to the bottom of the string. 1/8 inch on the bass side, 3/32 on the treble side. It's somewhat of a similar thing for Telecasters as well. A lot of it's going to depend on the radius of your fretboard and your pickups. For example, on the Eric Clapton guitar with the noiseless pickups, they're recommending 1/16 on both sides. So please remember, this is just a starting point, but I would probably do that. Now again, I like my pickups closer to the strings, so I will probably do 3/32 on the treble and maybe 4/32 on the bass side. And I speak in 30 seconds just because it's easier to remember that. Now for Gibson, Dan Erlewine recommends on the neck pickup 3/32 on each side as well. 3/32 on each side, and the bridge pickup 1/16 on each side. A lot of people like to lower the neck pickup a little bit more because just where it's located in terms of the string vibrating, there's a lot more vibration going on here than here. So the string pickup here will make the string appear louder. So it's important. Again, press at the last fret, you measure. Now one last thing, and this is something a lot of luthiers forget to do, but I want to share with you because I think it makes a huge difference. Let's say, for example, we're going with a 3/32 situation. Your pickup is totally flat. The strings in your fretboard have an arc or a radius to them. So what I do is I will measure each pole piece to be 3/32 and see how that works. Now, I'll tell you right now, it's not going to be even across the board. And this we're not going to do for the sake of the video, but after you measure the pickup body, let's say we're using 3/32, then you measure each pole piece and you come up with this little radius of pole pieces. Now you have to go through the sound test. And what you'll do is you'll plug your guitar in, probably on the neck pickup, volume and tone open all the way, and listen to the sound of each string. I guarantee you'll probably end up lowering your B string, maybe making your D a little higher, but that is the ultimate way, once you do the specifications, to get an even and smooth sound out of your pickup is just to plug into an amp, preferably one that's flat. You don't want one that's high treble or high bass. You just want to plug in and get the whole pickup to sound smoothly. You do it on the front and back, and for the middle one as well. On a Strat guitar, for the middle pickup, I don't have a problem with that pickup getting in the way, but some people do. So I would just say put it as high as you can that it doesn't interfere. All of these specs I'm giving you are a starting point. The rest of it is up to you and how you enjoy playing, how you think your guitar sounds good. Okay, a couple other quick things as we close. I want to talk to you about humidity. A lot of people get very concerned about humidity with their acoustic guitars, but electric guitars are made of wood too, and they need to be humidified. They should be kept at 50% approximately all year round. What's going to happen if you don't, it's going to affect your fret ends. I'm sure you've had a dry neck and those fret ends just sting you like a bee. It's also wet and dry guitars are going to affect your relief, and your guitar will never be accurate, and you'll be constantly having to do setups. So keep a humidifier in your guitar if either you live in a dry climate or you have forced air condition or heating. That's really important. Hydrometers are cheap. You could buy one at Walmart for about $8 or $9, and keep it in your case so you know the humidity in your case, not just in the room. Doesn't make a difference if your room is 90% humidity if it's only 20 inside of your guitar case. So give them some water love too. Also, as we talk about setups, there's the day after effect. I have seen with many guitars, and maybe more so new ones, where you could set up a guitar exactly like we talked about today, and the day after the neck moves or just something seems weird about it, maybe the intonation's not 100%, especially if you have a gig coming up or you just want to make sure you did it right. Give the guitar 24 hours to settle, and then go back and just real briefly run over the specs. Now, it seems like we've covered a lot of information, but after you do this a few times, this is all going to be second nature to you. I appreciate you listening. I just want to stress once again, first of all, thanks for putting up with my silly computer camera. I'm sorry I didn't have a better one, but this is just how to do a quick setup. I wanted you to be aware and just educated on how to do this. I'm sure that there are experts and luthiers who may disagree with some of this or have different specs or different feelings. You know what? Good for you. Keep that to yourself. And I would say check your setup. After every string change is important, but at the very least, check your setup at the turn of seasons. If it's going to suddenly get cooler or warmer, wait a week or so and then go back and check your setup. And doing these little things, again, that will come second nature, I think will give you not only a guitar that you'll love playing, but a guitar that will inspire you to play, and that's what's important. If you have any questions, you could just email me at the address at the end of this video. The information I will get for you will probably be out of the Dan Erlewine book, which again is a must-have. So thank you for listening. I really hope this was helpful in some way, and happy picking. God bless you, and have a great day.